All right, one more call. Calling from a 610 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Tim.
Yes.
Your old buddy, Thames Darwin.
Thames Darwin. How's it going?
All right, how are you?
Good. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It's the where you can see Mindy's in their natural habitat.
Oh, there you go.
I love Bucks County.
How is Mindy? We haven't heard from Mindy in a long time.
Yeah.
I moved up here like 6 months ago. I haven't bumped into her once.
All right. Well, you're not getting out enough.
Well, so as you might recall, I am a genocide expert. It turns out I am the person who corrected Kelly on the point that Michael's joke about oven-ready beta cucks was in fact funny.
Right. Okay.
Despite being a joke about.
I'd forgotten about that, but okay.
So here's the thing: is that I'm not sure. Maybe since I've been on the phone, somebody's made this point. But you actually have to prove a genocide case in court. So it's mainly a legal distinction,
right?
Right. I mean, and so if you like I would say that the operational example to use in this case is the 1995 Srebrenica massacre in Bosnia, which was ruled to be an act of genocide by the international. I can't remember. It was the ICT.
It was the ICJ, and it was Professor Francis Boyle, who we had on this program, represented them actually and won that case. Right.
So, on that basis, and because what we say about the Holocaust, for instance, is that it wasn't one event, right? It was literally hundreds of events taking place over the course of several years. Same thing with any genocide. I mean, and same thing with what's happening in Gaza right now. It's going to need to be proved on a case-by-case basis, I mean, so that you reach a point where there's a kind of tipping and you say, okay, well, we've reached whatever threshold is necessary to draw this conclusion. I would say, therefore, a couple of things. First of all, there's zero question that there's crimes against humanity and war crimes being committed. So that's just a given, I think, in the case of Gaza. More importantly to this issue of genocide, it's like point 2A and point 2B. Point 2A is that there will probably come a time, because there's been fairly consistent reporting about the finding of mass graves, that you're going to have summary executions found and things like that they're going to be made into a case for genocide against the International Criminal Court. But all of that said, and so I don't think that can be proved right now. All of that said, I think it was vitally important that South Africa used the term genocide in its suit against Israel, because it lent urgency to the issue such that it got brought before the court immediately. And that's why I think, yes, it's a legal distinction, but at the same time, it is just, also a term that's commonly used, and it's a term about which historians can fairly disagree about sort of when that particular threshold is met. And I think that the International Criminal Court made, on the basis of the evidence from a legal standpoint, probably the right judgment without actually ruling on genocide, because the physical evidence wasn't there to do so. But they also, very importantly, stipulated you have to be sure that you are preserving whatever evidence might be available to prove this later on. So
what are the criteria? Now, obviously, it's hard to say what constitutes the critical mass and when it sort of crosses that threshold. But what are the criteria that make it elements that could add up to cross a threshold? Is it just
say that
crimes against humanity?
Intent and their scale, right? So there's intent and their scale. Intent, I think, is 100% clear. I mean, I don't think that it's even debatable that there's an intent to eradicate in part or in whole the Palestinian people. I think that's been
now. You don't need to do it in whole. Is that correct?
Yeah.
They do not need to do it in whole. That's right. That's the whole point of Srebrenica, is that if you wipe out the male population in Srebrenica, that is sufficient to make a case for genocide, even though it's limited to a single town.
What of the defense of it's impossible that this is genocide because the number of Palestinians has grown over whatever I've heard, different sort of periods of time. What's the implications of that?
It doesn't matter. I mean, well, for one thing, I mean, the population of Jews grew. If you begin at 1900 and you end at 1965, the population of Jews grew over the course of that period, despite 60% of the Jews in the world being eradicated during that period as well. So, I mean, well, 30%, but, 90% of the Jews in Europe. So, I mean, so part of it is to say, well, there were still 3 million Jews left in Europe at the end of the war. So are you going to tell me that there wasn't a genocide? And the other thing is, populations recover, and the Palestinians are largely Muslim. They have larger families. It's a developing country as opposed to a fully developed one. So the birth rate is higher. You're just going to have a faster birth rate.
We should also say that, and again, this is a legal term. I can commit a crime, attempted murder, and it's still attempted murder even if I fail at the murder.
Absolutely. I mean, but to sort of return to the first point that I made, a case for genocide will be built on on an incident by incident basis. Like if you look at the rulings from the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, it's individual cases presented over and over again, so that you get this kind of critical mass. I think that the physical evidence at the beginning of the ICTR was probably sufficient to make a case for genocide, and really they sort of focused on making cases to convict individual perpetrators. But in this case, because of the fog of war, because Israel is so sort of firmly in control of territory right now, finding physical evidence on the level that was found in Rwanda almost immediately is going to be difficult.
Well, that's on purpose. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, but absolutely, that's on purpose. So, they're going to be bringing in, I mean, and obviously a big part of Israel knocking out journalists is to be able to knock out reliable witnesses. And, if physical evidence is eradicated, reliable witnesses are going to be the next evidentiary presentation before the tribunal.
Yep.
Yeah, and one, to also answer Sam's question from earlier, that argument's in such bad faith because this particular case brought by South Africa is contending that the genocide began post-October 7th. And so I don't know how you can make the population increase case in that instance because it's not applicable. I mean, go on.
But, I mean, Israel has been committing a slow-motion ethnic cleansing since 1948.
I know.
I mean, it did it rapidly in 48, rapidly in 67, but it also has done it in slow motion, for the entire time.
I know, but, to borrow your kind of emphasis here, this has to be proven in court, and for the, there's discretion, I think, that's being used by South Africa's lawyers here to confine it to post-October 7th to make the clearest case, especially when genocidal intent, as you say, was so clearly expressed by multiple members of the Netanyahu cabinet and himself. And then, I mean, there's also just these clear bylines in Article 2 of the Genocide Convention where Israel has met, as I feel like I've covered before on the show, at minimum 4 out of 5 of the planks of Article 2.
Right, and basically the only genocide ever to meet the 5th plank was the Armenian genocide, because the Turks had this policy whereby if you saved an Armenian child and you raised him to speak Turkish and practice Islam, that the person would be spared. So that was part of what was I'm blanking on the guy's name that coined the term genocide, but that's the specific instance he was thinking of when he devised that definition. Was this transfer of children. Yeah. One last point I wanted to make, by the way, was that it's pretty clear that Putin's goal in Ukraine, for lack of a better term, is, at least according to some definitions, genocidal. He might not be looking to eradicate physical Ukrainians, but he is certainly looking to eradicate the idea of Ukraine as a nation. Now, that's a legalistic distinction that's beyond my sort of pay grade to really sort of work out, but it's clear when the dust settles on this, if there's a viable Ukrainian nation state still around, it's almost certainly going to be filing genocide charges on that basis. I mean, but there's an argument to be made against it as well, just like there's, arguments to be made against virtually anything. I think a comparison of these two situations, other than I mean, as Matt pointed out, why are so many people rushing to call what's happening in Ukraine genocide and so few rushing to call what's happening in Palestine genocide, I think is a worthwhile comparison. But other than that, I mean, there's not a lot that you can really say that makes these two particular cases comparable. The situation under which Russia invades Ukraine versus the situation in which Israel bombs Gaza is, they're just different. They have different stakes to take into account.
Yeah, and
but obviously innocent people are killed in both cases.
Right, exactly. And I think that I'm supportive of that case. I just think that, like, from an urgency perspective, when we're communicating information, the genocide case is so clear in Gaza that I just don't feel hesitation about making that clear.
No, I don't, and I don't either. I mean, I think I did a podcast a couple of days ago with a friend. And I said, I don't think that they could make a case in the court right now for it, but I think probably when all this is over, they're going to find enough evidence to be able to make that case. I absolutely believe that. I think it would, given just the sheer kind of, I'll use the term chutzpah with which many of the people in the IDF are just like parading their war crimes. I would be shocked if there weren't mass graves at this point.
Right. Appreciate the call.
No worries.
Thanks, Darwin. That's good.
It's been a while. I don't even remember what James Darwin's voice sounded like.
So. It's been a long time.
Yeah.